Conversations from the front lines of recruiting. This is Hireside Chats. Join us as we delve into the world of recruitment and explore the latest trends, challenges, opportunities, and insights from the best in the business. Get inspired by industry veterans and discover the secrets to building powerful talent functions from their experiences. Whether you're a CEO, a seasoned HR professional, a growing business looking to scale, or someone just starting in the field, there's something for everyone. Ready for the ultimate recruitment power-up? Let's go!
Hello, this is your host, Sajjay, and welcome to another episode of Hireside Chats, a diamond-picked exclusive podcast that brings together insights, news, and views from the front lines of recruiting. Today, we are delving into a pivotal topic that can transform leadership: emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, or EQ, is more than just a buzzword. It's a game changer in the way we lead, connect, and thrive in our personal and professional lives. Previous generations of leaders led in a world where change unfolded at a slow pace. Leaders of today lead organizations in the present that changes every minute and into a future that is almost unimaginable. Leaders can no longer be directors, they must be visionaries. And in this hyper changing world, leaders need to be innovative, proactive, agile, and resilient as they consider a whole new way of communicating and connecting with their own people. Emotional intelligence lies at the core of this leadership transformation, with experts stating that it should be one of the most important skills a leader must have. So, in today's episode, we will unlock the power of emotional intelligence / EI, as it is called, and discover how it can propel leaders to greater successes. And to share with us her invaluable insights, we have Andrea Stone, founder and leadership coach of Stone Leadership. With over 25 years of multicultural experience as a leader in global technology industries, executive coaching, and leadership development, Andrea is responsible for bringing out the best in leaders and leadership teams in high impact roles, supporting them to effect positive change and thrive in the long term. Hello, Andrea, and welcome to Hireside Chats.
Hey, Satya, it's lovely to be here.
So let's get started. And, when we talk about leadership qualities, emotional intelligence is becoming more and more significant for leaders worldwide. And as you mentioned in your research paper, as a world grows less predictable and more complex, the need for emotional intelligence increases. Recognizing this, the World Economic Forum has identified emotional intelligence as one of the top 10 skills for 2025. So, Andrea, why don't you tell us a little about your experience as a leadership coach, particularly in the realm of emotional intelligence, and why are so many people discussing about EI, especially in the leadership context?
So they're very interesting questions. And just before we move into those, Satish, I was thinking, let's just get on the same page in terms of how we define emotional intelligence, or EI, or people would also say EQ, emotional quotient. So any of those, EQ, EI is fine. A really simple definition is using your thinking and feeling skill to make better decisions. Okay. So we feel, we think, combining those helps us make better decisions. The sudden interest in emotional intelligence. So I think I'd ask you and anyone listening to just reflect on, why is it some people are super successful and you wouldn't call them intellectually, brilliant? Actually, that's something we've known for many years. We've noticed that, but was research done on this? So someone called Daniel Goleman, in fact, even before that, there'd been research in this area on emotions and emotional intelligence. But Daniel Goleman wrote a bestseller in 1995 called EQ, Why It May Matter More Than IQ. And that kind of got people interested. It gave terminology to this capacity to think and feel and make smarter decisions. I was given that book in 1995. So I remember receiving it and thinking, what are you trying to tell me? You don't think I'm emotionally intelligent? And since then, I agree, that's increased. Now, why is it important for leadership, or why do we see it especially essential for leaders? It's because leaders are leading people. The people are emotional. They're far more hardwired to react emotionally than to trigger their thinking skills, right? We react based on emotions. Once we think, we can have a more considered response. So leaders are dealing with people. So that ability to tune into people, to understand how people are feeling. You said, how can you inspire people with a vision? Absolutely essential. How can you motivate people to do the research, to do the analysis, right? How do you understand what motivates people? It requires you to tune into people. And so as a leader, you're leading people, you've got to have emotional intelligence. And there's a lot of research on this, that the star performers at senior leadership level have higher EQ, or the traits that they display are EQ traits predominantly. So I think that's why it's really important we're dealing with people.
Right. And why do you think EQ or EI is even more relevant and important during times which are volatile and highly unpredictable, like the times that we are going through today? And I assume, based on what you said, it assumes a lot more relevance during these times. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely, Satish. So it's actually hard to be emotionally intelligent when we're stressed, right? And they can be pretty stressful times. So we've had a tumultuous few years, right? We've had the pandemic. There's been increasing uncertainty in many parts of the world with economic downturn. So the level of uncertainty is high, and uncertainty typically in many people triggers stress reactions. So it's hard to be emotionally intelligent. It's hard to deal with our emotions and make good decisions when we're feeling stressed. I think that's one of the key reasons that emotional intelligence has come more to the forefront recently in the past few years, because we're dealing with so much uncertainty. We're dealing with so much change. And as you know, around 70% of change initiatives, even if they're intended, fail, generally not due to the logical thinking skills of leaders. It's more often due to the people. Do they feel involved in that change? Are they ready for that change? How are people inspiring them to move forward in that uncertain time? So I think in periods of uncertainty, that's what leaders have to deal with, and different emotions, different states of readiness to deal with uncertainty, different appetites for change. And we have to change a lot in uncertain times. We have to change and then change again when things don't work out. And that takes a lot of energy, and emotions are essentially energy, right?
So in a complex and competitive world, emotional intelligence is pretty much non-negotiable for leaders to possess. And like you said, it helps leaders inspire and connect better with people. What do you think are some of the components of emotional intelligence that one must possess to be an effective leader? And in your experience, you worked with several leaders. You're a leadership and executive coach. Do you also assess and tell them the importance of EI? And how do they demonstrate EI at the workplace? In your experience, have you come across instances where leaders who have exhibited high emotional intelligence or emotional quotient, what specific behaviors do they demonstrate that our listeners can pick up some tips from?
Yeah, just broadly, so there's quite a few competencies that are required for emotional intelligence. But if you speak very broadly, just think of 3 areas. How well do you know yourself? How well do you know what you're feeling right now? Or how well could you articulate some of the feelings you've been feeling recently? Why is that important? It's important because if we can name something, we can deal with it, right? And emotions have got data in them. So if I can name something I'm feeling a bit scared, I'm feeling a bit anxious, then the question is why? So do I know what I'm feeling? Do I know how I typically respond or react to situations that challenge me? So that's the kind of what am I feeling, what am I doing aspect of emotional intelligence, that self-awareness, observing yourself. And if you can do that, you can very often then look at other people and think, well, might they be going through? What's happening with them? So it's being curious about what's going on within me, how I typically react in a situation, what might be going on for other people. That observance, that curiosity is important. And that often conflicts with, like, I've got to do this. I've got this task I've got to do. It's a waste of time to just think about what I'm feeling. I've got to get this done. But the point is, the data and the emotions can help you decide, is this really the best use of my time? Why am I feeling so frustrated? If I'm continuously supporting some of the colleagues who should really be doing this by themselves, there's data there. Now, what am I going to do with that data? So that self-awareness is absolutely critical. Then, obviously, is what other people see, the self-management. How do you respond in those challenging situations? Or how do you typically respond to maybe situations that other people wouldn't find challenging? So some people feel having, a difference of opinion is a challenge. We call it conflict sometimes. And other people don't even see that as a conflict. How do you manage yourself when you think, I've got to disagree with someone, I've got to disagree with my boss, I've got to tell the customer this is going to be delayed? Do you hide that information as long as possible, or do you have a constructive conversation? Do you prep yourself to show up well, to handle that other person, to understand that other person, what they need to hear in that situation, and still move ahead and give the message that you need to give? So that self-management, do you react or do you respond intentionally? And I keep thinking of when you said vision earlier, we as leaders have to be upbeat. We have to uplift others. So even in those times of, this isn't how I expected it would work out, can I take a breath and acknowledge it's not turned out how we wanted, but what are we going to do in this situation? So show the way forward. How can we move ahead? How do we engage other people, to take on the challenges that have now emerged, right? And I think another really important part of self-management is, how do we manage what motivates us? Are we driven by other people's goals? Are we driven by what's important to us, what gives meaning to us? I think that's really critical. The third point, I call it self-leadership, but it's really, what's your purpose here? If you're a leader, why are you a leader? What, the bigger picture of what you want to change. Not necessarily the short-term goals, but that kind of bigger value or that bigger goal that you have in life. So, for example, for me, it's helping other people realize their full potential. So connecting to that and leading yourself in alignment with that sense of purpose. So important. So that's 3 broad things to think about. And there'll be lots of other competencies that come in. I'm sure, we talk a lot about resilience, because in uncertain times, we don't know what's going to work. We have to bounce forward, bounce back, but actually bounce forward in those situations. So that's some of the things to think about, Sati.
Thanks, Andrea. We're going through your research paper on the EQ paradox in India, which states that, a higher person's EQ, the higher a person's score on success. A couple of questions there. One is EQ truly measurable? I mean, can you put some numbers and metricize those? That's one area, because emotions are so tough to measure. And as far as I know, feelings, emotions, all of them are, while they are expressed, to put a number, to quantify it is difficult. So it's interesting, you say you can actually score them on their emotional quotient. And the other question I had was, how does EQ contribute to success in all realms of your life, not necessarily professional alone, personal life, your social life, and so on? It'll be great if you can just highlight to us on these 2 areas.
Yeah, so is it quantifiable? That's a really good question. So like I say, there's a lot of research. I do a lot of work with EQ assessment. So these are scientific, validated tools. I work a lot with an organization called 6 Seconds. Daniel Goleman, who I mentioned earlier, also has assessments. This is a variety of assessments that are scientifically validated. Now, the point is, when you're responding to any kind of self-report assessment, you've got to be genuine, right? Because then obviously you'll get meaningful data back. So yes, scientifically validated assessments are helpful because you see how you are on the different parameters we mentioned. And the really important thing is, yeah, you might score low, but where are you high? Where are you not high? And how does that show up? And so to the research that I'd done with 6 seconds, which I was really curious in India, because we had a lot of anecdotal evidence of Indians being super strong thinkers, very, very logical, know what to do in a situation, can analyze the situation, know what's the best way forward, but not necessarily acting on that insight. So with any decision, there's emotions involved, right? If I'm deciding that I need to speak up in a meeting, but, I'm surrounded by senior people, I might become nervous. I might just hold back. I might think they already know this. So I don't speak up because I'm a bit worried. I'm a bit anxious. I don't want to look silly in front of all the senior leaders. So we don't follow through. We don't handle our emotions so well in India. So whilst we've got the thinking power, we know what's important. I do actually need to share this point, but then navigating those emotions that come along with that decision can be challenging. And so that's the paradox, that I've got this thinking power. Now apply it to what I'm feeling. Right? I'm feeling worried. Why are you feeling worried? Because I'm not sure if the other people will agree with this. They may belittle me. So we go into this overthinking, overanalysis, and then we don't speak up, or we get so frustrated, we blurt it out, and it's not effectively presented, right? So I think that is the great EQ paradox in India. And it's almost a tragedy that if I've got all this thinking power, why am I not acknowledging that I'm feeling something here? Let me just use that analytical power to work out what it is and how I can move forward. So we back that up with research. Over 550 people responded to 6 seconds scientifically validated assessment. And we got that insight, and it's confirmed. Yeah. Again, super high score on logical thinking things through, much, much lower score on, feeling this. How do I deal with these emotions? And kind of getting stuck with the emotional aspect thing. I've had some leaders say to me, I don't have emotion. Then what they mean is, I am not emotional. There's a big difference. We all have emotion, but we don't all show those emotions, emotionally showing those emotions. And it can work well to show emotions in some situations. It cannot work well to show emotions in some situations. That's part of emotional intelligence. Which emotions do I show, to what degree, and with what purpose and intent? Which do I kind of keep to myself and work through and decide I'm going to respond with using that insight at a later time.
So thanks for that, Andrea. Just to follow that, the times are tough. I can tell you, we work with a lot of customers, we work with a lot of leaders. These are stressful times, trust me. And if you can share, how do leaders bounce forward, like you mentioned, from tough situations? Things may have not gone the way they want. The morale is down. People are looking forward to the leader to bounce forward and inspire them and motivate them. It's tough. There's no cookie cutter approach, or there's no set of rules to follow to suddenly start inspiring and motivating people. So in such a circumstance, how does one use one's emotional intelligence, emotional quotient to help inspire people, especially, during these times?
Yeah, it's a really good question. First of all, as a leader, how do I manage my energy? So you asked earlier about success, and success has multiple components, one of which is, how's my well-being? how's my sense of balance in life? Am I feeling healthy? Am I getting me time? So leaders often sacrifice that, even though logically they know that's not going to be productive medium long term. I need to have the me time. I need to get my 8 hours sleep a night. But they can sacrifice that. So first of all, think about 4 aspects of success. One is the well-being. How are you taking care of yourself? What's the quality of your relationship? Close personal relationships, your broader network of people you can tap into. What's the quality of your relationship? How much you're investing in those? And then other 2 aspects are really what are you achieving and how satisfied are you in those achievements? Because like you said, in stressful time, you may be achieving a lot, but you're just not enjoying it. You're not satisfied with what you're doing. So taking time to think through that. Well, you may not be achieving, in which case, what's the root cause of that? Right. Just take a moment. Why am I not achieving? Do I have the resources? Am I focused on the right goal? And the other aspect is really about your effectiveness, your ability to influence and make decisions. So all of these are very important for success in life. So in stressful times, how do leaders bounce back? They have to look after themselves. Who are they turning to for support? Often leaders sometimes feel, I've got to know it all. I've got to bear all this on my shoulders. I've got to make the decision. So yeah, ultimately you do have to make the decision, but who's involved in supporting that decision? Who have you got as your support mechanism around you? It could be your colleagues. It could be people outside your organization. It could be family and friends, but where's your support system to help you bounce back? How well do you know your people? How engaged are you with your people? Do you know what motivates them? And I think that leadership is a gift that keeps giving, because you think you've mastered something, you think you've got insight into your team, and then something changes, right? The dynamic changes, a new team member comes, someone goes through a crisis personally, what motivates them is quite different. So knowing the dynamics of your team is a challenge as well, but it's absolutely essential as a leader because you're dealing with people. Once you know that, you can work out how best to motivate them. And people often need a mix, right? They need the kind of big town hall where you're speaking to them all, where you're talking about what we're doing, where you're encouraging people, where you're recognizing people. They also need that one-to-one time, that personal connect, or the small group discussions where their voices are heard. Because people want to feel belonging. They want to feel close to other people. So taking time to know your people is really essential, right? And that helps them bounce back. That fuels them.
There are people, leaders who are conscious that they lack emotional intelligence. Now, for such leaders, and they would have gone through various surveys and they would have heard feedback from their people that, you have to be a lot more emotionally intelligent and so on. What, according to you, is a good starting point for them? And as far as I know, EI just be, you can't become emotionally intelligent from day 1 or day 2 once you're given this feedback. So what would you recommend as, simple guidance, simple tips from your side to develop this key trait?
See, that's a really good question. And I think it would depend on the leader you're talking to, right? So first of all, I'm assuming the leader wants to invest in improving their emotional intelligence. And we know that emotional intelligence is a learnable skill. It's not fixed at all. If we practice, we improve. If we practice empathy and standing in others' shoes and trying to understand how they're feeling, we improve, right? So it's absolutely a learnable skill. I think one thing that leaders really value is observable evidence that they can relate to. So I'll share one story because it just illustrates my kind of assumption and then the leader's assumption of what was important. So I was working with a leader, really successful person, managing thousands of people. And The team loved him because he made really good decisions. He's very fair, no nonsense, straight talker. And then one day I said, how are you when you're on the floor, when you're walking amongst your people? How are you? He really didn't understand that question. I said, he said, well, usually I'm in my office. I'm not usually on the floor, with everyone. I said, but when you go on the floor, how are you? And he said, well, when I'm on the floor, I'm just going from A to B. So it was a task. It was, well, if I need to go and speak to X, I'm just walking to X. It's almost like I've got my head down. That's where I'm going. End of story. And that really made me laugh because he hadn't thought that there's hundreds of people watching you as you walk on the floor. And they're observing everything you do. So you're giving out signals the whole time. Is that a great opportunity to communicate things are good? I'm smiling, and exude that energy of we're doing well, we're going to do even better. But he hadn't thought of it as an opportunity to communicate, talking to people, but, smiling, making eye contact, going from A to B, but at the same time connecting with people. So I hope that illustrates to some extent, have a conversation. Are they vested in building that awareness that will impact their leadership?
Thanks. I think you gave me a very practical tip of how to be more emotionally intelligent So I'll be very conscious of that when I walk the floor. And are there any tools that leaders can leverage to enhance their emotional intelligence and leadership skills, especially in today's digital work environment?
Yeah, there's some simple things you can do. One is just place a mirror above your screen if you do a lot of screen work and see what you look like, see what the emotions are in your face. If you're on a Zoom, what do you look like? So check in. Is my face showing what I'm feeling? Do I want to alter my face to make people feel a bit more comfortable? There's another that is really effective is journaling. And some people have quite a strong response to that, negative. They don't want to write things down. But the process of writing takes things out of your head and puts it on paper, so it frees up space. It helps you analyze. So just writing down or just checking in. It's before a meeting where you're not feeling comfortable. A really good technique is when, then, or when the boss asks me this tough question, then I'm going to respond like this. Or when someone's taking too much airtime, then I'm politely going to say, could we hear from some other voices? So the when-then technique is really good. If you're talking about gadgets, nowadays we have the kind of what's your heart rate? And that gives you information too. Are you feeling too stressed? Are you feeling too anxious? What's fueling that heart rate? So just get a bit curious about that. And I think the other really important thing is, you can sit at your desk for hours. Get up, take breaks, refuel, do a bit of mini exercise, do a micro meditation. Just switch off for a bit because too often hours go by without rejuvenating, replenishing your energy. So I think there's some tools and techniques I use to just bring it down, those intense emotions.
Thanks for those very interesting insights. And before we wrap up, Andrea, I wanted to ask a customary rapid fire set of questions. We're looking for very quick, crisp responses from you. So let's begin. Can you share a moment of leadership that had an impact on you?
Yeah, someone giving me very straight feedback in a way that I took on board. So that showed great emotional intelligence, like knowing how to give me feedback so that I would appreciate it.
A sure shot approach or step towards enhancing one's emotional intelligence.
Observe yourself when you're not at your best and what's caused you not to be at your best. And work on it.
Okay. And what is the most common misconception about emotional intelligence and how do you address it?
That emotions are just feelings, but emotions have got data in them. Can I just add one more? Emotions aren't good or bad. They're just emotions. They're just trying to help you. try and understand why they've shown up.
And a follow-up to that, your own personal hack to effectively managing emotions in especially high pressure situations.
So I used to say, breathe, hit the pause button. Now I just say, close your mouth.
Okay.
Because that's very practical, right?
Thank you for that. And the last one, a book or an article on topic that you would recommend as a must read.
See, I love a 6-second state of the heart report. It's a global report on EQ around the world, cut in different ways by industry, by country, by competence. And it's produced every 2 years by 6 seconds. So I always look forward to getting that. Yeah. I mean, if I can only say one, that's what I would look at.
Thank you very much. And that wraps up another episode of Hireside Chats. From understanding the fundamentals of EQ to practical tips and advice, we have journeyed deep into the heart of leadership excellence. Thank you, Andrea, for your very interesting perspectives and inspiring anecdotes. I'm sure our listeners are thrilled to hear about those. And for those who tuned in, thank you very much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Join us next month once again for another episode as we continue to bring you the latest and the best from the recruiting world. Find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Don't miss a single episode. Subscribe to Hireside Chats today. And don't forget to leave a review or share on your socials to help us reach as many ears as possible. Stay tuned. And once again, thank you very much, Andrea, for your time.
Thank you.